I think Charlie mentioned, I used to be a trustee of Block 336, which was a fantastic space on Brixton Road, and a large space that did great exhibitions. And did you say it's 2021?
I think so.
2021. No Place Like Home. Large exhibition of works, and there were quite a lot around that time that were around kind of queerness and cruising culture, but then there was things about the kind of Vauxhall Tavern, quite big tableau that were kind of, I guess, showing us the world in which we live in all its grit.
Yeah, kind of like really public and then really private or secret moments, I think, like interspersed throughout the show.
Yeah, which is kind of a theme, isn't it? And then obviously at some point I had a kind of terrible realization that I was going to have to commission works for the King's coronation, and I had to work out how on earth to do that and follow up from 1953 and sort of Lowry's and Laura Knight's, and Dale's work came to mind, which is an interesting choice thinking about your subject matter then, but you were quite happy to take that on. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I think we've spoke about it before, and that you can have your kind of own practice, but then you can also have like a sidestep into something else. And we're talking about commissions, and if you can see the content of some people's paintings, maybe you think it's not suitable, or it's too crazy or out there. But what I said about the commission work is it's nice to kind of have some structure or be kind of told what to do or asked what to do sometimes, rather than just having complete like free reign all the time in the studio.
Yeah.
Like to kind of really, pinpoint something down and to work with somebody else.
And there was a range of artists that we work with, including, I think, just thinking about the response of a couple, particularly, say, Hugh Locke, who kind of, as I asked him, I could see him going, "Don't ask me, because I'm going to have to say yes."
Yeah.
Because it's sort of compelling but tricky.
Yeah.
And that's one of the interesting things about our collection as well. I suppose it sort of represents the UK and the diversity of the UK, and what does that mean? But you kind of really relished that.
Yeah. Well, I think I did a commission for the Pitch House Cinema in Finsbury Park, so I was already used to kind of like how it was going to go. But also it just comes down to the basics, like, artists need a job and they need money, and they need to keep the studio going. Like, say for that reason, then you build up around that, it's a really good opportunity, I think, to take up.
Yeah.
And also you get, like I met you, I get to work with you and meet other people, and it's about kind of creating those networks or opening up, like, what you do into other fields. And
you stood in the rain for a long time. But the other thing about that work was that it also sort of flipped the landscape to the portrait, right?
Yeah, so that was the connection I thought I wanted to talk about to like the Bell Hotel painting. Because up until working with you, the work used to be large, but, landscape format, and, it was very specific, that size we talked about and from the commission. So having to get on like a ladder and just like the physical kind of maneuvering around the work was like a new thing for me. And then after doing it, I like kind of how imposing it was, and like how tall it was, that it was kind of bearing down on you. And so since the commission, I always had an idea to paint and work on this scale and that size and that way round. And then, it took whatever it was, 2.5 years before one actually was kind of produced.
And this is one canvas, isn't it? Because the one for us was
two sections. Yeah. Yeah, so I had this in the studio for maybe 5 months, just kind of kicking around this big canvas. And then I thought, and my grandfather was dying at the time. I made it. It was around Christmas. So I was driving through Epping High Street, where they'd have these protests twice a week about this kind of migrants being housed at a hotel on the edge of the town. So I'd often get caught up in them, like driving. And then you see kind of two sides to it. You see, like, the pros and cons of this thing, and this kind of political thing. But I wanted to kind of get everyone into the picture. I didn't want to make like two versions or two sides of the story. And I was like, how do I get everybody in? And a bit like with your work, they're all kind of heads. So there's a medley of everyone that was there on the day. So this was kind of everything that was there when I saw it. So you had, there's Gemma Collins, she was a TV reality star. But they'd rework the slogan to say the only way is Epping, so the only way is Essex. There's mugshots from the police, there's Boudica, there's the schoolgirl, there's the judges, there's Yvette Cooper as the Home Secretary, and all these things and slogans that are read out, see it, sorted, 61016, British Transport Police. So it's just a way of kind of organising some kind of chaos and just all these kind of stories flying at you all the time and just kind of trying to arrange them in a more formal kind of way. And it was the same time, so I've been studying horticulture, and it was Christmas, so I got a Christmas tree into the house, and I was thinking what the Christmas tree really means, and and then we decorate it in our kind of taste and tat and all these things, and then we just chuck it out and the council pick it up and burn it or shred it or whatever. And at Horticulture College, I was taught to preserve plants, think about them, care for them, grow them, and just this biblical kind of massacre of, trees that are cut down and discarded. And this kind of way we live now, this kind of throwaway kind of thing, and, trying to, how we don't really think about things, you just go along with what everybody else is doing. And also this bucket, the bucket of the Christmas tree is really tiny, because at college you learn to put the right thing in the right size, container. And then it's got this convex kind of floor, which is a copy of the tartan from the Bell Hotel pub. But it's on this curve, so it's this small bucket and this tree that's becoming kind of more and more loaded. Mm. So there's this sense of, because it's kind of caught in this frame and held up in the frame, but this idea of society on this kind of tipping point where it could kind of come crashing down.
Yeah, and I suppose that's why sort of so fascinating if you had these next to the coronation piece in terms of kind of politics or the kind of representing.
Well, I try and avoid all politics and everything. I'm not really interested in it. But it's just something that's always there, so you can't not see it, or you're in Marks and Spencer's picking up a sandwich and you see a flash of the newspaper. It's you can't help but catch it, and I think it kind of naturally feeds into it without me really,
Do you actively avoid the news?
Yeah, I've not watched news for 6 months, I think, or something.
Wow.
I'm trying to not, because I need to focus on what I'm doing. I get very distracted.
Yeah.
I was reading the news, but doom scrolling for hours.
Yeah.
And I thought I'm not getting anything done. I just need to.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Go and do a painting and then go home and have dinner, watch TV for an hour and go to bed, or water the garden. Do something else.
Yeah. And then you actually was just also thinking that one of the reasons why that length. Do you remember I came to see you in your garden? You were working in a tiny shed at that point at the end of your garden, so you could only make the canvases on this side, so they were kind of stuck together.
Well, I could only see it in one if I took it out of the shed at the back of the garden, bolted it together, and then rested it against the shed, and then stood up on the other side of the garden.
Yeah.
But do you remember I made a whole version, and then we got the dimensions wrong, so I had to remake a whole new version. It was too wide and not tall enough.
Does the other one still exist?
I've still got it, yeah. It's my copy.
Yeah. You wanted to then reflect back to the last show you had here?
Yeah, I think that because I haven't had a show with Edel Assanti for 5 years, so I was just thinking about the show 5 years ago. It was in their other space, just a few streets over. But cause the feeling of doing this show was the same as when I did that show. So I thought it's not about the work, but more about the connection of what was going on in my life at the time. And we're just coming out of COVID, and I made this huge 30-meter painting that wrapped around the gallery. And I thought the art world was over, and if you're going to go out on a kind of high. So we just made this one picture that kind of fit together, one work, one price type thing. And I think everyone was on the point, is anything going to get back to normal? Is it all going to carry on again? And then fortunately, or by some miracle, we sold the work, and it was just this thing that started everything off again. But then that was really good, and like that single painting. But it was like putting everything on like red or black or something at a casino. It was like just risk it all, because like either do it or don't do it. It has to be everything, or it has to stop. And so that worked out. And then like that was the biggest kind of sum of money that I'd ever received, like in one go. And then I was like, finally, like the first time in my life, like early 40s, like, you know, I can put a deposit down on the house. So that's what I did, like straight away with that. And I was like, oh, things are gonna, you know, get better now. But then they got much worse like after that. So I had like, you know, bankruptcy and this for like 3 years and whatever. And it's like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? And like, I've got something that I wanted, but now how do I hold on to it? Or do I even want it anymore? And then like that's why this show is important, because I felt like I'd gone back to that kind of crisis period that I was in at that time, and I made that big work. Because I'd started horticulture college, so I was like, I just can't paint anymore. You know, I can't pay for a studio, I can't pay mortgage, I can't live. I need to do.
So what made you want to go to horticulture college?
Well, I thought I'd always been interested in plants, and you've been to the garden, and like I got more and more into the gardening, and I thought. And also I felt like the art world didn't really like support me. There wasn't anyone there, like if I really needed help, that would come and kind of save me or get me out of this. And like all the friends you kind of think you have, and this structure and this support, it doesn't exist. It's like an illusion, really. So it's like, I need something a bit more grounded. I need something that feels more real, you know, that I can kind of put my hands into. And like it gives back in a kind of, like, I don't know, richer way than art did. Art just felt like very fast and very flashy, and, you know, it was like parties and all this. And like, I just felt like I need to be more connected to something. So that's when I started the horticulture course. But then almost like the first day I did that, I was like, I don't want to be a gardener. Like, and I had to go back to the studio. But then when I went back to the studio, I don't know if anybody's been downstairs, but there's a picture downstairs of like what it is, looks obvious, but it's not about like that personal story or that connection. That was the first painting I made. So it was like, if I'm gonna start painting again, like I have to do exactly what I want to do, and I have to make the work for myself and not think about it in a commercial sense.
You would describe that work, because it's pretty full on.
But it's a kind of metaphor for change. I think I'd wanted to make that painting for like 18 years, and I always thought, oh my God, it's too violent, it's too bloody, it's too, you know, triggering for people. But all this work I made in the whole show, I never intended to show it or to sell it or for everybody to be here looking at it. You know, it was like, I'm just going to start doing what I want to do, and if that door never opens to anybody, then that's fine. But then I'd managed to break that kind of curse that I think I had between being jealous of other artists or peers, and, you know, they were doing this and that, and their lives are going well in that sense. And, you know, and it was changing me as a person. I think I was becoming kind of more unhappy, like really insecure, really overthinking kind of things, rather than, you know, just doing something that I'd always loved. I ended up hating it.
And so that painting was a big cathartic.
Yeah, and it's a metaphor for kind of change and feeling like that and starting a kind of new direction. And I think it
get
kind
to
of
the
worked
end
out.
And then
It's like being sick, you know, and then you feel great afterwards. Yeah, it's like, that's what it felt like. And I think I've managed to carry like that through. And also, like, if I have an idea for a painting now, I make every painting that I have an idea for. And I used to work like that, like really early on. And I'd got so like backed into a corner, I think, with the practice, that I didn't really want to do it anymore.
With a sort of formula as well you're talking about.
Yeah.
But then when I came to your studio, I can't remember what that was, but at the beginning of you making work for this show, and you were just like in the zone and leaving large areas of kind of just raw canvas, like completely, you know, undale work, and then and pushing it and not knowing how it's going to end up. And like you say, they didn't know what was going to be in it.
And that freedom within the work, because I think the worst thing an artist can do is to go in and just make like another version of the same painting in a slightly different size or different color. Like, what's the point? Like we said before, you know, like there's structure and routine or expectations outside of that, you know, like people take their kids to school and pick them up at the same time or have dinner at the same time. or EastEnders is on at 8 every week, you know, like, but the studio doesn't have to be like that. You know, time doesn't exist, and like, there's no expectations, and like if the paintings are a bit embarrassing, or a bit weird, or this or whatever, like I don't care anymore. But like I don't care about anything anymore, but also I take it more seriously now than I ever have done before. So it's a different feeling.
And that was something I guess we were talking about as well just before, in terms of our relationship with the digital and how you can be, well, you just talk about the news and being consumed by things, and your discipline of going into the studio and not having your phone, or if you need any images, you've already printed them out before you go there, so you're not drawn into it.
Yeah.
But then you had this reference to the Strawberry Thief work that you want to talk about. Do you want to expand on that? Yeah,
I mean, that's another painting downstairs if you haven't seen it nipped down. But I'd seen, like, I think a Nico Eisman show at the Whitechapel, I think it was 2 years ago. And there's one picture of, I think it's her and her girlfriend, and they're kind of laying on a bed, but one of them's on the phone. And they're kind of looking out the picture at you, but then behind them, there's like a projector with like an image of the universe or something, like a screensaver. And then I read more about that show, because I thought her paintings were really interesting, because, like, you know, the shape and size and scale and things, but they look a bit mixed. Like, and what a few people have said to me at this show, like, they said, "Oh, is all the work by the same artist?" And like, that's the kind of thing that I thought about her work. Like, but there was this one work in particular that it was almost like a Marvel or kind of character, but of like a stone-headed kind of man, but like a small portrait. And I was like, that's a weird picture. So I read about it like more, and she was like explaining that she got to a certain point in her career, and like all the doors kind of slammed around her and everything was kind of going well. And then all of a sudden she was in this kind of black room, and, you know, she didn't know where the door was, and she didn't know what direction she was going in. And so she made this work, and then she just had to go through that kind of process. And maybe artists, we do get to that point sometimes, you know, where you feel like, I feel a bit adrift and rudderless, you know, just floating on the moonless night somewhere. But you know you're going to hit a rock or something soon if you can kind of stay on it and keep that kind of belief that something will come round the corner and something will change and something will work out. I mean, that's like life in general as much as it is about painting.
I guess, yeah, we were talking about then the natural world and the digital, and then it sort of took me back to kind of young Dale, who's in a couple of these paintings. So there is the one at the front, True Leaf, which is more, I think, links back to where you are now as well. So
yeah, well, I think it was the first day at college, and like it was the first time I've been in a classroom kind of environment for like nearly 30 years, and it was just really weird. And being at college at like 9 on a Monday, like I've not had to get up like at all for like 11 years. I could get up at 1 in the afternoon, and then suddenly to be like, you know, it's Monday, it was really weird. But then we were like propagating plants as well, but it took me back to like art classes at school. And like our art classes for 3 years at school, we used to just draw this kind of preserved pufferfish, like that the teacher would put on the table, and then he'd go and smoke in the cupboard and come back. But then I was with my friend, and he'd just had this commission, I think it was for Norman Rosenthal, St. Jerome in the Study, the Messina work that's in the National Gallery. And he was working on that at the time, and I went to his studio, and I had this idea about college, and I saw him working on that, and I was like, oh, that's kind of good format. And then so I started to think more about this painting. And then, so the face of the figure in there, originally it was this kind of...
on the other side of that wall.
Yeah, they had like blonde hair, and I thought, you know, it looked too cute and this and whatever, but I wanted it to be about everybody's kind of experience at school. Like whether you're 80 years old or 8 years old and starting school or whatever. And like I remembered at school, I had this Unplugged in New York album, Kurt Cobain, like next to my bed, like all my teenage years. And I thought about, he's got this kind of nice androgynous kind of face that kind of fit like that story. And then so, but this thing about getting through school and like my school was so bad that just, you know, you just had to battle through the day. You didn't actually like learn anything. You just had to get from like 9 till 3 and then it was over and then you could live your life. So you've got the kind of empty sheets of writing paper tumbling from the desk. So there's this sense that you've been there and you're kind of there physically, but nothing's kind of going on. And then the stenciling, like I've really got back into, which I used to do years ago. And I was reading about like school violence or something, or it came up on Instagram. I think it was in Bradford or Bedford or something. It was the first time they've introduced like American style metal detectors when kids go into school. And just thinking about how easy it was when I was at school in that sense, there were no school gates, you know, everyone just kind of, you left your bike on the floor, it was fine. And more to what it would be like today. But anyway, like the knives, that was the kitchen, like studio knife and like my garden axe and I can't remember what else is it, and the hammer from the studio. So I just kind of put the canvas flat on the floor, spray painted around them. And I was going to paint over the whole thing at the back, but I thought, oh, it looks really kind of good and graphic. So I thought I'd leave it. But then I was starting to think about the Pink Floyd song, like Another Brick in the Wall, I think from 1979. But the animation is incredible. She's got all these kind of marching hammers and that kind of haunting sound of like the kids choir. I think they're from Camden or somewhere. Mm-hmm. Like, and I watched the video and I listened to the song a lot on like a loop and I was making it and I was drawing like that connection to the past to kind of now. But it's not just about violence, it's about like kind of trades as well. So it's like to do with like carpentry, you know, culinary, like people becoming chefs and builders or whatever else. It's not all about violence and death. It's meant to have a dual kind of meaning.
I have to say, when I saw the brick wall and the student, that song immediately came into my head. I don't know if all generations would have that. And then the other kind of Youngdale piece is you next door, right? Holding the flag.
Yeah, that was another painting, like the shotgun painting downstairs. It was like, you know, where's the level? And this is a problem with kind of commercial shows or whatever and how sanitized or polite art needs to be nowadays, maybe. I don't know. Like, it's just that niggling thing, like all the time. Like, does it kind of fit with the wallpaper of the person that's buying it? Or is it about what you want to say, you know, and where is that line? And like just making it for yourself. And I always thought, can you paint, you know, like a 2-meter naked kid, and can you do someone like the painting downstairs? And I was like, you kind of can for me if you're connected to it, and if it's got that thing that's kind of boiling in you that, you know, you just want to do it. And it's not to shock people or surprise people. It's just to kind of like, there shouldn't be any real boundaries or limits, I don't think, of what you can do. And that was a memory of me as a kid, as a child. So like probably from like 1988, and then, you know, it was dead boring on Sundays and weekends, like no shops drove. Like football was on telly constantly and growing up. And so I used to put mum's stilettos on and drape this kind of Union Jack around me and like prance around the council flat. And I called it mould because the flat was mouldy. So I had this Care Bear wallpaper that would peel off the wall and then try and like glue it back on. So this idea of something that's meant to be kind of colourful and pretty ended up becoming kind of black and green and, you know, and it took on a kind of horror or dark kind of feeling. But like this kind of playful nature of it, I think that's like the spirit of like the boy in that painting as me as a young kid still has to carry the spirit through to the work. Now you can't lose that childlike curiosity or, you know, play within your painting, I think. Yeah. That's what I still like. It's like arts and crafts, and you know, you shouldn't just get to one point and repeat it and carry on. You should still keep lifting the rock up and looking for a slug or something. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I never would have thought of your works as sanitized anyway. Like, I wouldn't come to a show expecting, you know, in a way, the horticulture's a kind of interesting, different way in, you know, but it's. So if that's Youngdale, is that? Yeah. So this. Old Dale.
Yeah, and this was one of the last works that was made that just kind of slipped into the show at the end, and I think because I used to use so many like classical references, so like the formula of working before was to kind of go out, go to a bus stop, go to a pub, whatever, see people doing something, find a Renaissance image, overlay the two together, and that created the painting. And then there was so much kind of narrative, but I got so bored of that. And then I'd make like 10 drawings and make the work. But now I just work directly onto the canvas without any preparatory drawings. So as soon as I have the idea, everything exists within this frame or on this surface. Like there isn't a copy, because before it was copying and copying and copying. So I'd been to Rome, I'd seen the Bernini show in February, and I was making this around when Baselitz died, and I thought, like, that's annoying that's happened, because it wasn't ever to do with that. But I was looking at Blake's watercolours. So there's a Blake watercolour called The Great Day, where there's this naked man with his arms out, and there's all these kind of beautiful rainbows and colours, like emanating above him. And it's like I read about it more, but it's to do with like a time when light overcomes darkness, you know, and the world gets better and things improve. And then I was thinking about how kind of things, you know, the darkness is kind of, you know, descending on us again type thing. And then, so I wanted this to be a kind of like almost a goodbye painting to the past and to use in these Renaissance images. But I was also thinking about Matisse's The Snail as well. That was one of the first artworks that I saw as like a teenager and got taken on a school trip to London. So these coloured cutouts. And I was like, that's rubbish. Like, that's not a snail. Like, do you know what I mean? When you're like a young teenager. Like. Yeah. But then I kind of wanted to use this block pattern. So I thought about this. It's a kind of exercise in restraint as well. It's like the paintings before were so overloaded. I was like, how much of a kind of light touch can I have and put like enough information in it without giving everything over? And then so I chose these kind of faded colours, and they kind of represent like blood and tears and like piss and vomit. And then so I tried to kind of block it, but then I had a print out of it, and I spent like 2 days drawing the figure, because I've always been really obsessed with drawing, kind of more than painting, and I've always thought I'm a painter that draws with paint and not a painter that paints paintings. So I thought, but then I was like, what colour do I do it? And then I was thinking about like the form of your body and like tracing the form of your skin and thinking about the blood and like everything within. And I'd been drinking a lot at the time, so I'd saved all my kind of, you know, small bottles of whiskies and wines that I was getting from the shop next door. And I had this huge bag of them, like Father Christmas's like sack. And I laid those on the bottom, I spray painted those. So it's this idea of, you know, things getting better, but this kind of crash or this kind of relapse into bad habits or bad behaviors. And I painted it as a kind of reminder, as a mirror to myself, like, you know, when things are like that, it's kind of fine. And, you know, and then you change and get better, and then it happens again. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because that's the sort of last painting, and then the one downstairs is the sort of first painting. Both stylistically and both represent a kind of acceptance or a moment of change for you.
When I think like I got to like full on middle age, and like things I used to like doing just overnight didn't want to do anymore, and you know, and it was good because it freed up a lot of time. Like I'd go out a lot and party a lot, but then suddenly I didn't want to do that anymore, and it gave me a lot more time to be in the studio.
Focus on that studio.
Yeah, and focus on study and kind of like work on yourself a little bit more. It's like I've got high blood pressure and stuff now, do you know what I mean? You need to, like, all these things like start to kind of creep in. And also like the painting, it just gives me so much more than like a night outward, you know, like if I do something good that I like and that I've done it and I've given it everything and all my attention, it gives so much back to me for such a longer, you know, time. It's slow burning. I could get such an energy back from it. When
did you move from the shed to the studio? Was that a kind of...
About, 2 years ago, I think. Yeah, because I was so broke. I was like, I can't have a studio, so I was trying to work in the shed. But the shed was only like 6 foot tall or something.
Yeah, it wasn't very big.
And then the sun on it, and then you're just burning. And then I was like, I can't separate like lunchtime from dinner time to work time. Like I need to leave the house and go somewhere else and work and then go home. Like work from home, I think. I don't know how people do it.
I think the kind of, the not necessarily the last work, but you wanted to talk a bit more about, well, you talked about about the shroud, essentially, the one around the corner.
Yeah.
Which sort of brings us a bit back to the bell.
Yeah, that's kind of linked, because that was the shroud painting was like the day my granddad died. So this one kind of they were made at a similar time, or that one's after. But I thought the shroud, like, not about the subject, it doesn't matter like who it's about, but what I liked about it, like when my granddad died, we put this kind of novelty blanket over him in bed that my cousin had, you can get your face printed on a mug or a mouse mat. So there was this like funny present that he kind of had. But it was all pictures from his life and like us as kids and my parents as kids. But what I was more interested in is making like a painting within a painting within a painting. So rather than it just being kind of one image, maybe like this, you could have you could have multiple stories, and you could have a really complex narrative without it really being that obvious. And also this kind of impasto paint, and you could have things that are almost not there. That's what I kind of like. So you bounce so it becomes more about the experience in the surface as much as it is about trying to understand the image. And then I thought about advent calendars, and there's this kind of surprise and, past, and also about, like American style, like patchwork quilts, and like how we used to repair clothes and do things at home and do mend and all this, like British sewing bee or something. It's got this kind of nice thing, or knitting. I used to knit with my nan, and it brought back those memories that I'd forgotten about. It's like a 6-year-old or whatever.
Yeah.
So this idea of craft and stitching and things linked together, like memories linked together and people linked together.
And the family sort of weaves in and out here as well, don't they? Family, friends, and then your parents are kind of reflected in one of the...
Yeah, one of the butterfly paintings. One of the reasons I wanted to kind of stop painting is because like this thing with the market, and when I wasn't making any money and I was trying to think, what can I do that's kind of more commercial? And that was a problem with trying to do these small works. And I had 5 of these kind of small canvases like this size, like in the studio. And I think I went like 5 days out of 6 to the studio, and I'd sit in a chair and the canvas was on the floor. And I would stare at it for like 6 hours, and then I'd just walk out the door. And that happened again and again. And I was like, this is like absolutely crazy. I've got to stop, enough.
Did you buy the canvases because they were a smaller size and they would be more commercial?
I thought this is like how I got into my head. I thought, the work's too big. You can give someone one of these and probably get it on a Ryanair flight or something. And they're cheap or whatever than the bigger work. And like I was like, art shouldn't be. Why is this even coming into your head? And I was like, this is the thing where I had to try and separate the two things.
How did you break through that?
Well, I think because at college, and we were studying drawing butterflies and horticulture, this was one of the diagrams from college at the time. It was a poster that I was really fascinated with. But we were studying extinction, pollinators, so everything in this painting is extinct in the British Isles. So even though it looks like a nice place to be, it doesn't exist anymore. But the first successful one, I think, was this little one called Do Bird, because I still had them in the studio now. And when we were thinking about putting a show together, we thought, are there smaller things we can kind of, mix it up with a little bit? And I opened my studio bag and I found this crumpled piece of paper, unwrapped it, and it was the RSPB survey that I did in the garden. So it was my tally of the blue tits and the robins, the pigeons, the greenfinch, and the parakeet that came into the garden. And I unwrapped it, and I really liked how dirty the A4 line piece of paper was. And I thought, if I could kind of maybe translate that in a way onto a canvas. So I did this, and it was kind of like a revelation. Like after all these years of trying to kind of make a small painting, it was a thing that fit, because what I was trying to do before was shrink huge paintings into miniatures or take like a viewfinder or detail something within a bigger work, and that didn't work either. So I was like, where is the middle ground? And then I think these kind of started to work. And the butterfly ones as well next door, because they're about shift work and like blue collar workers, like my parents, like, lorry drivers, factory workers, nurses, people that work around, cleaners that work around the clock. Like, one will come in, kiss the other one will go work, and kiss the other one will go work. And it's on this kind of cycle. So I was thinking about pollinators. So the one next door is a black-veined white butterfly that went extinct in the 1920s. The other one's the Essex emerald moth that disappeared off the Kent coast in the 90s. So this idea of these two things together just passing in that moment. So Kiss Goodbye, I think one's called. So there's these kind of, where their antennas cross, it's meant to be this kind of touch and go.
And there's one where the colours are the sort of NHS, is that right? There's a kind of green and a white.
Maybe, yeah.
No,
yeah,
that was where I went with it.
Yeah. When I was bringing a lot of printing back in, like what I was saying with the Shroud Grandad's painting and the arts and crafts, I started to use like lino cuts again and stenciling that I wasn't doing for years. So you'll see the same stencils in the Bell Hotel painting. I think it's in this one on the floor, and it's in that butterfly painting. So the one on that painting, it's meant to be this kind of idea of burnt habitats or loss of habitat, like elm trees, forest fires, and things like that.
Shall we go to questions, or do you want to, is there more that you...
No, I think we've covered quite a lot.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, that's great.